let me take you live to UPSA, where the 2024 Annual Lecture is ongoing.
We welcome Reverend Theophilus as he helps us with the opening prayer.
Shall we please bow down our heads for a word of prayer? Heavenly Father, we thank you this morning for the gift of life. We bless you for bringing us together for such an important meeting. We ask that your Spirit will lead us. As we are here to learn, show us the way, direct our path. In the name of God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Distinguished guests, we welcome you to the University of Professional Studies, Accra, to our 2024 Annual Leadership Lecture. We use this platform to discuss pertinent issues that confront our nation. And today is one such occasion where we look at leadership. And so I would like you to welcome the Vice Chancellor of the University as he gives us a welcome remark.
Good morning. Oh, UPSA, when we need to respond, good morning. Thank you so much. Her Excellency, the First Lady of the Republic of Ghana, Dr. Mrs. Rebecca Akufo-Addo, our distinguished guest speaker, Right Honorable Lord Paul Boateng and wife, the Chancellor of the University of Professional Studies, Accra, Dr. K.K. Sapon, the Chancellor of University of Cape Coast, Dr. Sam Jonah, Chairman of the University Council, Dr. Kofi Oyenekonedu, and members of the University Council, Honorable Ministers of State and members of Parliament here present, the Deputy Minister of Education, Professor Kingsley Nyaku, Nime, Name, Nananom, captains of industry, colleague vice chancellors, rectors and registrars, members of the clergy, members of the security services, members of convocation, alumni of the university, members of the media, my dear students, distinguished invited guests. With distinct pleasure and excitement, I extend a warm welcome to you all to the UPSA Annual Leadership Lecture Series, the sixth of the series since its inception, themed Fulfilling the Promise, the Challenge of Leadership, Moving from Rhetoric to Delivery. Let me first appreciate the Lord Boateng, a member of the House of Lords in the United Kingdom, for graciously accepting our invitation to be our honorary guest speaker for the 2024 Annual Leadership Lecture Series. Indeed, I do recall with fond memories the role that your dad played personally in my life at the University of Ghana, where he took it upon himself personally to mentor some of us. I was amazed by his passion for Ghana, even at that old age. So if I stand here as Vice Chancellor today, your dad played a key role. Thank you so much. A warm welcome to all other distinguished dignitaries who have responded positively to our invitation. The Annual Leadership Lecture Series was established in 2017 as a platform to critically examine, deliberate, and discuss critical global and national issues pertinent to our society and proffer solutions for Ghana's sustainable development. Lord Boateng joins other exceptional leaders from our country, namely His Excellency Dr. Mohamed Bin Chambers, who delivered the inaugural UPSA Annual Leadership Lecture, His Excellency John Ajikum Kufuor, the former President of the Republic, His Royal Majesty Otumfuo Osei Tutu II, His Eminence Cardinal Peter Turkson, and the renowned economist Mr. Kwame Mpianim. They delivered the second, third, fourth, and fifth lectures, respectively. Year after year, the leadership series has been a very useful and impactful platform with positive lessons and insights that have been laid for total reflection. In a world inundated with promises, pledges, visions, and aspirations, the journey from rhetoric to delivery stands as the ultimate test of leadership. Your presence here is a testament to our collective desire to embark on an exploration of this profound challenge that has confronted leaders across all spheres of influence in Ghana since independence. Thank you for accepting our invitation to this lecture, which promises to be a memorable and thought-provoking one. On behalf of the Chancellor, the Chairman, and members of the Governing Council, and the entire university community, I welcome you and leave you in the company of our distinguished speaker, the Lord Paul Boateng. Thank you so much.
I would like to welcome the Registrar of the University, Mrs. Lauren Jan, to introduce the guest speaker.
Thank you very much. And a good morning to all here gathered. Before I go ahead, allow me once again to welcome you all to the beautiful campus of the University of Professional Studies and to our beautiful edifice, the Kofi Ohene Kunedu Auditorium. Thank you very much for making the time to be with us today. And I can promise you that it's going to be a very productive time. Our guest speaker for today is the Right Honorable the Lord Boateng. He is a lawyer, admitted solicitor in 1974, and was called to the bar, the Grace Inn, in 1989. He's a politician and diplomat. He was brought up in Ghana, West Africa, and attended the Accra Academy Secondary School then. And then he followed up to the UK and attended the Apsley Grammar School, Bristol University, and the College of Law. He was elected to Parliament in 1987 as a Labour member for Brent South. In 1997, he became the first person of color in the UK to be appointed a minister, serving first as parliamentary undersecretary in the Department of Health, as Minister of State in the Home Office, as Financial Secretary in Her Majesty's Treasury responsible for Revenue and Customs. He also served in the Office for National Statistics and then in the Cabinet as Chief Secretary to the Treasury responsible for the oversight and control of public spending in the UK. In 2005, he returned to Africa as the UK's High Commissioner to South Africa and the Prime Minister's Special Representative for the Africa Commission. He was thereafter the founding chair of the Africa Enterprise Challenge Fund based in Nairobi, Kenya. He was also the member of the Public Health Advisory Board of the US pharmaceutical company Gilead Sciences based in California between 2010 and 2019. He currently serves as Senior INED and Chair of its Nominations and Remuneration Committee of the Ghana International Bank, headquartered in London. He chairs Waters and Sanitation for the Urban Poor and Not-for-Profit Public-Private Development Utilities Advisory company supported by the World Bank and global private donors based in London. And in that, he works with offices in 7 African countries and Bangladesh. The Lord Boateng founded Achim Law and Advisory Company, which advised a range of private and corporate clients on geopolitical risk management in emerging markets. The Lord Boateng non-profit interests include community relations, international economic and youth development, and the performing arts. He currently chairs the Church of England's Archbishop's Commission on Racial Justice and is co-chair of the Grenfell Tower Memorial Commission. He is a board member of the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra and a ballet rampart. The Lord Boateng, Governor Emeritus of the London School of Economics, is in his 2nd term as Chancellor of the University of Greenwich. He holds honorary doctorates from the University of Bristol and a number of other universities in Britain, Africa, and the United States. He's a frequent speaker and broadcaster globally on a range of current issues, particularly in UN Sustainable Development Goals and global security. He was appointed Commander of the Royal Victorian Order in His Majesty the King's first birthday honours list. I present to you all the Lord Paul Boateng.
Thank you, please. Your Excellency, the First Lady, Vice Chancellor, Chancellors, Nananum, Chairman, sisters and brothers all. I am delighted to be with you this morning to deliver the 6th UPSA Annual Leadership Lecture. I'm conscious not only of the distinguished list of previous speakers at this event, but of the nature of this illustrious academic institution which sponsors this series. For UPSA has distinguished itself over the years, not least under your leadership, Vice Chancellor, in its commitment to academic excellence and on its focus on the delivery and professional service and on the development of partnerships, innovative partnerships, local, national, international, between the public and the private sectors. Always, and for this you deserve much credit, putting the citizen, putting the consumer, the beneficiaries of service at the heart of all that you seek to achieve. So I approach the topic of this lecture, fulfilling the promise, the challenge of leadership, moving from rhetoric to delivery. I approach the topic very much in the spirit of what I believe motivates this institution, its founders, its staff, and its students. And that is excellence, excellence in the delivery of service. After all, was it not the founding father of education on this continent, the late and celebrated Dr. Kwegia Agre? Was it not his maxim that only the best is good enough for Africa? Only the best is good enough for Africa. So excellence, excellence in the delivery of service. I am conscious too, hence the subtitle of this lecture, on the role of academia in shaping leaders. the role of each and every one of you, the teaching staff at this university, the service staff who support them, your role in shaping leaders, the leaders of the future, so many of whom are sat in this auditorium today. Each and every one of you, the young ones, the leaders of the future. I'm conscious too that as you shape these leaders, staff and faculty members, as you shape these leaders, you bring them into the world, a world that faces at this time challenges on a huge scale. The challenges that require a framework for leadership. And that framework for me, that framework for our world, is provided by the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs. So it's that focus on the role of academia in shaping leaders that's so very important. Hence the maxim made famous by JFK, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, that leadership and learning are indispensable to each other. Leadership and learning, indispensable to each other. So institutions of higher education, like this one, therefore, have a critical role to play in producing and shaping leaders and informing the actions of leadership, not least in the delivery of evidence-based policy. Evidence-based policy. For the scale of the problems our world faces at this time and the complexity of their nature, the multifaceted nature of effective action required to address them, demands a response that is based not on rhetoric alone, not on bland assurances or blind or bigoted assertions, but on evidence, science, expertise, and the product of tried and tested experience. The tried and tested experience that is reflected in so many of the lives of the distinguished personages in this room. And yet, you know, we live in a world and at a time in which there is a crisis of confidence, a crisis of confidence, a deficit of trust in all of our institutions, a world in which conspiracy theories abound. Just go onto the internet, look at the product of your WhatsApps. Conspiracy theories everywhere. A world in which conspiracy theories abound and in which all too often demagoguery is preferred to reasoned debate. And there are plenty of demagogues, are there not, in our world? Demagoguery, preferable to reasoned debate. So UPSA, this institution, the institution in which this august hall is located, is to be congratulated for carrying the torch of academic excellence and for professionalism in service delivery. It has never been more important than at this time for us to stand up for those values, to stand up for them and to invest in them. Why do I say that? Well, let's examine the facts, the context in which we are discussing the nature and quality of leadership and the acquisition and exercise of its function. We live in a world still reeling in the aftermath of the COVID pandemic. A pandemic which exposed for all to see and for all of us to experience the fragility of both global supply lines and global health systems. A pandemic which saw a widening of the gap between the richest and the poorest of our world, between and within nations, and which was then followed by a conflict in Europe whose repercussions have spread way beyond the Ukraine and that continent and affect us all. 60% of workers today in our world have a lower real income than they had before the pandemic. 60% and rising of the poorest countries in the world are in a state of debt crisis or at real risk of it. And the latest figures from the World Food Programme suggest that as many as 309 million people are facing acute levels of food insecurity. For all, domestic food price inflation remains stubbornly high. There's no country in the world that has not experienced domestic food price inflation. The reality is that in both low and middle income countries, that's a phenomenon that is widely experienced, and higher energy costs, trade restrictions, and a loss of fertilizer supply from the Russian Federation and from Belarus have led to fertilizer prices rising even faster than food prices. Ask any farmer that. Ask any farmer that, and that is their experience. So the geopolitical situation, heightened tensions between competing superpowers, conflict in the Middle East, in the Horn of Africa, insurgencies in the Sahel, their impact on livelihoods compounded by the environmental impact of climate change, on the agri-sector, but also on at high-risk communities throughout the world through flooding and extremes of temperature. Extreme weather events that are affecting more and more people all over the planet. Climate disasters cost the global economy around $520 billion per year. $520 billion per year, with a disproportionate share of the adverse effect of that being borne by developing countries such as this, who are forced to redirect domestic public money towards adaptation and loss and damage control effort, as opposed to developmental spending. And the result? A $1.2 trillion financing gap in social protection in developing countries alone. That's the scale of the problem. And these conditions have put a spotlight on the quality of all our institutions and their leadership, globally, nationally, locally. Leadership that has been tested on an unprecedented scale. Leadership that is exposed to scrutiny by mass communications as never before, the World Wide Web, social media. For good or ill now, any one of us with a smartphone is a potential reporter, a broadcaster, or social influencer. All of you, all of us, with our smartphones, become potential broadcasters, reporters, influencers. And when you add to this the new power of artificial intelligence, it's unchecked, unregulated, and still, by most of us, largely unknown potential. And we find ourselves in unknown, uncharted waters, don't we? Don't all of you sense that at this time? Unknown, uncharted waters, seeking a compass, seeking some direction of travel so that we can find a way forward. Seeking leadership. Seeking leadership. From a variety of sources. Now, some of these may be welcome. Some sources of leadership may be welcome, some helpful, but others are definitely not helpful. Others we know to be harmful. And yet, we live in a world desperately seeking leadership from any source. Now, I'm conscious that I have in the past 48 hours and will be returning shortly in the next from one country in the midst of a hotly contested general election, the United Kingdom. I'm also conscious, as I left the hotel today, the Labadi Beach Hotel, I am conscious that I am in another country which is anticipating a hotly contested general election. So you will forgive me and understand if in my lecture today and if in my answers to your question, I will be avoiding any comment at all on the outcome of those elections, or on the merits of the parties, or the issues which they are facing, avoiding any comment at all. Nevertheless, it is worth noting, isn't it, that the conclusion of the Democracy Index, published just a short time ago by the Economist Intelligence Unit, a distinguished and established commentary on the state of global governance, an authoritative commentary on the state of global governance, began with the headline, "Conflict and polarization drive a new low for global democracy." Conflict and polarization drive a new low for global democracy. I quote word for word from that commentary. 3 years after the COVID pandemic, which led to a rollback of freedoms around the globe, the results for 2023 point to a continuing democratic malaise and a lack of forward momentum. Only 32 countries improved their index score in 2023, while 68 countries recorded a decline. The scores for 67 countries stayed the same, pointing to a global picture of stagnation and regression as authoritarian regimes became more entrenched. Countries classified as hybrid regimes struggled to democratize. And the editor of the report draws specific attention to the Sahel and West Africa as amongst the worst performers as coups and conflict spread across the region. Now, that's the picture. And it's not a happy one. There is, I suppose, some positive in that more people than ever this year, however, will actually go to the polls, even though the world's 63 democracies are now outnumbered by 74 autocracies. Everywhere, however, everywhere, whether in autocracies or democracies, whatever the state of governance, the question is asked, what's to be done? What's to be done? The answer demands, surely, a higher standard of leadership. A higher standard of leadership. And I suggest that in reflecting on the subject of leadership, we need not just to question what's to be done by other people, the politicians, the corporate leaders, the chiefs, the heads of institution. We shouldn't just be questioning what's to be done by them. We should be asking ourselves, each and every one of us, what can or should we do? What should each of us do, whatever our state or stage in life, whatever our occupation, to answer the call to leadership? It's not just a question about them, it's a question about us. It's a question about us. And I would suggest, and this is at the heart of what I have to say to you this morning, I would suggest that the his and the her of leadership, the his and the her of leadership is high performance, innovation, and service. High performance, innovation, and service, the his. And the her, high performance again, enterprise, and respect. High performance, enterprise, and respect. The his and the her of leadership. And it's these two working in partnership that are the very foundation of delivery. High performance is the common and indispensable basis of delivery. Innovation reflects the capacity to think outside the box, to look, to see, and to dig to find out, and to act on what you see and find out in ways that are shaped by the maxim of it's what works, what counts. It's what works, what counts. You know, it reminds me of that saying by Deng Xiaoping. It doesn't matter whether a cat is black or white as long as it catches mice. It's what works, what counts. And so the I is for innovation. The S is for service. The quality of that to be delivered will be determined by the attitude of those charged with the task of delivery. The quality of that to be delivered will be determined by the attitude of those charged with the task of delivery. The Abrahamic tradition, I would argue, gives pride of place to the concept of servant leadership. We are all of us peoples of the book. And whether your book is the Bible or the Quran, or indeed the Torah, our Lord, speaking by and through the example of his Son or the prophets, blessings be upon them, calls us all of us, to be servant leaders. To be servant leaders. The best sort of leaders puts others before self. The best sort of leaders puts others before self. And you know, it should therefore be no surprise that it is just such a person who puts others before self that the others turn to and follow. That shouldn't be a surprise, should it? That it's the person who put others before self that others turn to and follow. So the S is for service. H-I-S. The her, his. The her starts again with high performance. You know, there's no substitute as a leader. There's no substitute in leadership for high performance. It is the common and indispensable basis of delivery. High performance requires study, research, practice, acquired proficiency. It doesn't just happen. It takes us back to the maxim, leadership and learning are indispensable to each other. But book learning, you know, even the willingness to innovate are not by themselves enough. The H and the I by themselves are not enough. Delivery demands the E in her, in HER. Delivery demands the E. And what is the E for? The E is for enterprise. The E is for enterprise. The E is for entrepreneur. The E is for exuberance. The exuberance that entrepreneurial spirit brings to any enterprise. True leadership, I would suggest, requires a willingness to embrace the E. And where you cannot find that in yourself, because not everyone can be an entrepreneur. Not everyone can be a Sam Jonah. You know, if we can't be an entrepreneur in ourselves, we have to embrace and to utilize the entrepreneurship of others in moving from rhetoric to delivery. And last, but by no means least, the R in her. R is for respect. R is for respect. Respecting yourself, respecting others. And R, reflecting that in your conduct and in your approach towards others and the task in hand, rooting that respect in shaping a culture of delivery, inspired by that culture of respect, not just for self, but for others. The R in her is therefore for respect. High performance, enterprise, respect, the his and the her. High performance, innovation, service, enterprise, respect. This is the nature of effective leadership, the basis of the move from rhetoric to delivery. Delivering what? Now, I would seek in this lecture to suggest that given the state of our world, the complexity of the challenges that I've referred to earlier on in my opening remarks, and the nature and frailty of the human conditions and our interdependencies, summed up in the Ubuntu principle, we are what we are because of others. Ubuntu, we are what we are because of others. I would suggest that the best approach and the one most likely to deliver impact is one that causes us to look at ourselves, our lives, our communities, our nations, and the world through the spectacle of the Sustainable Development Goals. The SDGs, after all, represent a universal pact entered into on our behalf by sovereign states in solemn undertakings made under the aegis of the United Nations, which for all its, through all its flaws and weaknesses, the weaknesses and flaws we know that affect multilateral institutions, but it does offer the world its best and indeed only hope for a shared understanding and global progression towards a better future. Sustainable development goals to which we all, as individuals, corporate and communal institutions, regional, nation states, and multilateral institutions, all of us commit ourselves by our actions to achieve those goals by 2030. That was the pledge made in signing up to the Sustainable Development Goals. There are 17 in total. I hope you see them up there on the screen. If not, you can Google them. But I'll focus just on a number of them in the course of this lecture. But they are all interlinked, reflecting the importance of interdisciplinary approaches to wider societal issues. Not one Sustainable Development Goal can be achieved in isolation from the other. Taken together, I would argue, they represent both a spur to action, not least in the face of the recent setbacks, the pandemic and the conflict in Ukraine, in Gaza, to which I have referred, but also importantly, in addition to that spur to action, a shared platform upon which we can all stand, building partnerships and consensus through taking a lead ourselves. All of us, each and every one of us, whatever our standing, whatever our state, whatever the nature of our position in this world, all of us taking responsibility, taking the responsibility of leadership in our homes, in our communities, in our institutions, in our nations, and beyond. And let me just illustrate this with some concrete examples. We are meeting here, are we not, in this academic institution, UPSA. It's not a chance meeting. It's because this university has chosen to put leadership at its heart. And it's a recognition of the truth of that maxim, that leadership and learning are indispensably linked. You know, you referred earlier on, Registrar, Vice-Chancellor, to my own education in this country. I am acutely conscious of, what the role of academic institutions in the foundation of this nation was. Acutely conscious of the journey that inspirational teachers like Kunwa, Harmado, and others, the journey they made from Jamestown to our current campus of the Accra Academy. Blue. It didn't just happen. Those men set out on a journey. They took us with them, did they not? Those of us who have benefited from their foresight, from their recognition of the importance of education. They set us upon pathways that led to careers that span the globe. We were raised on the motto, esse quam videre, esse quam videre, to be rather than to seem to be rather than to seem to be. For it is education that realizes goals and gives vision substance. Education realizes goals, gives vision substance, gives legs to leadership. Education gives legs to leadership. Esse quam videre, to be rather than to seem to be. So quality education, SDG 4, is, I would argue, central to the delivery of them all. Central to realizing not just personal ambition, but the ambition that the SDGs represent for a safer, healthier, more equitable, better fed, biodiverse, and sustainable world. That's what the SDGs stand for. The founders of this nation recognized the link between higher education and development. And the older ones of us here, and I recognize a few of you, I recognize and pay my respects to the senior minister. You know, we remember, don't we? We remember the inspiration of our founding fathers. We remember the Big Six, their recognition that to generate growth in GDP, to generate growth in agriculture and in industrial development, you have to make that link with higher education. You have to make that link to break the vicious cycle of dependency on external aid. The vicious cycle of dependency on external aid and the great powers. Who here did not remember that moment when His Excellency the President stood next to the President of France, Macron? It went global, it went viral on WhatsApp, and made the point about the need for us to cease to have to rely on external aid. If we are to break that vicious cycle of dependency on external aid and the great powers, those great powers who have fed and continue to feed on Africa's resources, and whose activities with their willing collaborators hold Africa down in an impoverished and conflicted posture. We are held down in an impoverished and conflicted posture by the dependence on external aid and the great powers. It's something terrible, you know, when the statement on the internet that a Dutch passport is worth more than a Ghanaian PhD. There's something terrible when that goes viral on the internet. Say it isn't so. Say it isn't so. Say it isn't so. And if it is so, it must not be so. It must not be so. We cannot allow it to continue to be so. Leadership. Leadership. That must be at the heart of our response. And you will forgive me for my passion on this issue. And you've made reference to it, Vice-Chancellor. I am the son of a former Minister of Education, Higher Education and Science in our country. The son of a founding teacher of the Ghana International School. Teaching and education and politics are in my blood. I was present, one of the few here, perhaps the only one who was present, more than 50 years ago now, at both the inaugural convocations of the University of Science and Technology in Kumasi and of the University of Education in Cape Coast. I was present at both as a small boy with my mum and dad. chairman of those two councils. And many years later, as Chief Secretary to the Treasury in the United Kingdom, I was pleased to be an alternate member of the Africa Commission, which, largely due to the majority African membership of that commission, and in particular, the political leadership of the late Prime Minister of Ethiopia, Meles, and the profound economic scholarship and the distinguished Ghanaian economist K.Y. Amaoko, who at that time was director of the UN Economic Commission for Africa and who was in due course the founder president of the Africa Center for Economic Transformation. As a result of the activities of that commission and the input of those two men, we saw the reversal of a decades-long and deeply flawed policy prescription from the World Bank and the ravages of the IMF's structural readjustment program, which disinvested in higher education in Africa. The World Bank and the IMF disinvested in higher education in Africa at the same time as the tiger economies of Asia were investing in higher education. Is it any surprise then that Malaysia overtook Ghana in terms of its GDP? Is it any surprise then that Malaysia, who after all were gifted by the former first Prime Minister of Nigeria, Sir Abacha Tafawa Balewa and Dr. Azikwe gifted Malaysia not just the saplings of the palm oil trees, but also the Nigerian technicians. He gifted that technical knowledge and those saplings to Malaysia, and now Malaysia outperforms Nigeria in the production of palm oil. That's the reality. All the result of bad policy, poor governance, and it must be said, a failure of leadership. So we are now required to play catch-up. Say it isn't so. Say it isn't so. Sisters and brothers, SDG 4, quality education, must be at the heart of leadership, and the role of institutions such as this central to its development. And each and every one of you, its students who are its beneficiaries, it is for you to take up the opportunity. It is for you to assume the mantle that calls you to leadership, the his and the her of leadership. High performance, innovation, service. High performance, enterprise, respect. Now, I want us to move from political theory to practice. And I want just to take one example, if I may, of what it seems to me we need to be doing as we move from rhetoric to delivery. I want us, as I begin to draw together the strands of a vision of leadership that is rooted in a culture of respect and service, to focus on what we can all do ourselves individually to move from rhetoric to reality in one intensely practical and personal aspect of our lives: water and sanitation. Water and sanitation. We are made up, all of us, largely of water. That's the nature of human biology and the human condition. We're made up of water. The disposal of bodily waste is an intensely personal activity that throws up practical challenges and has very real consequences for health and well-being. And I remember, as a small boy, we lived in Adabraka. I was not alone in living in Adabraka. I lived just down the road from the president. He lived near the cathedral. We lived still in Adabraka, but in Asylum Down. This is before he moved to Nima, and we moved to Tisano. I remember, as a small boy, the night soil man. Yes. I remember the night soil man as he made his regular visits to our home. I remember the wooden box and bucket toilet. I remember. I was a small boy. Small boys are fascinated by such things. Who is this man that comes to the house? What goes on behind that box? I was a small boy. I can remember my mother's joy in our family's progress when we got our first flushing toilet. It was a sign we were moving on up. I remember her joy. But for me, what was joyful was the opportunity to flush the toilet, which I did repeatedly. So much so that my mother took me to task for wasting water. But to hear the sound of that running water was a joy. At my first secondary school, which I had to leave early because I got blackwater fever. So boarding wasn't an option, so I became a day boy at Akaka. But in my first secondary school, which shall be nameless, but because I'm a Kraka boy, I don't want to name the other school, but I was at McCarthy House, so you know what I'm talking about. The punishment was to move night soil. So we boys did everything we could to avoid that particular punishment. So for me, SDG 6 and SDG 11, the commitment to water sanitation, decent water and sanitation, their contribution to health, that for me has a real resonance. I know and understand what it means. It has committed the whole world to clean water and sanitation and to sustainable cities and communities by delivering that. And of course, we know that in delivering clean water and sanitation and sustainable cities, we help with SDG 3, good health and well-being. We help with SDG 4, quality education. We help with SDG 5, gender equality, because, you know, there's no way we can be serious about girls' education unless each and every school does not have safe, decent, sanitary conditions for girls. Because if you don't have that, then girls on their period are not going to go to school, and girls' education will suffer. So if we are serious about gender equality, and we're serious about quality education, about SDG 4 and 5, we need to take water and sanitation seriously. And we need to make that a priority. Not just a priority for them, that lot, the government. Not just a priority for politicians, but a priority for all of us. What can we do in our individual roles? What can we do as corporate leaders? What can we do as chiefs? What can we do as individual citizens? What can we do to make a reality of that SDG? Not just for ourselves, but for others. Service, respect, Ubuntu. We are what we are because of others. Now, I am now chairman of Water and Sanitation for the Urban Poor, that global organization. We work in Africa, we work in Asia. We are in, 7 African countries now. We're in Bangladesh. We do consultancy work in Indonesia, in India, all over Asia. We were founded, more than 20 years ago now as a public-private partnership, not-for-profit, involving, again, partnerships, key. The sort of partnerships that this university represents, a partnership in our case between Cranfield University, one of the oldest business schools in the world, Unilever, CARE, Borealis, Thames Water as was, public-private partnership, people coming together with a common purpose, assuming leadership in their particular fields, working to ensure that we have affordable drinking water, connecting poor communities at an affordable price, building at a time of climate change resilient water and sanitation systems, improving utilities, policies and regulations, safe and dignified toilets for all. And we're working globally to achieve that. Reaching in 2023 alone more than 10 million people globally, mobilizing millions of dollars in finance worldwide. Now, one of our core countries is Ghana. We have reached over 3.8 million people here with improved water and sanitation services. Nearly 9 million people with education and information to improve wash and specific hygiene practices. Mobilized over the years, more than $57 million of investment in services for low-income communities in WASH. Thank you. In WASH in Ghana. We work in Accra, in Kumasi, in Tamale, in Takoradi. We have a long-term relationship with the Ministry of Sanitation and Water Resources, the Community and Water and Sanitation Agency, and the Ghana Water Company Limited, and I commend those. But you know, our biggest cheer, our biggest clap, needs to be those people in the towns, those people in the villages, those civic and traditional leaders working with teachers, public and private stakeholders, parents, working in those communities, those urban communities and small towns, in order, by their leadership, taking individual responsibility to impact on water, sanitation, and health. Taking responsibility to make a difference. But you know, I have to share this with you. Proud as I am of their achievements, when I look back, you know, from the time when I was that small boy in Asylum Down in Adabraka, you know, I'm not a small boy anymore. Oh, I know to laugh so loud. I don't have an afro anymore. I don't wear shorts, except in private. I don't have flares. You know, now I'm looking for hair. 73 years on. 73 years on. That country then, which in the 1950s, Ghana, Gold Coast, we were just, 8 million or so? We are now 33.5 million and rising. We are no longer a colony. We are a fully functioning democracy. We are richly endowed with mineral wealth and natural resources. We are blessed with human capacity and potential. I would argue that is unmatched on this continent. I would say that. But I do believe that Ghana is special. Ghanaians are special. We have something to offer, something to contribute. You cannot go to any major city in the world and you will not find a son or daughter of Ghana, a grandson or granddaughter of Ghana who has not just made a success of their lives, but is making a success of other people's lives in those countries. And yet, still, to this day, 60 plus years on, 33% of urban residents live in informal or inadequate housing. 12% of our people are still without basic drinking water. 84% of our people are without safely managed sanitation. 84%. Still, we have, to move beyond survival. We must move beyond survival. We have to scale up to succeed. We must scale up to succeed. Where is the promise? Where is the promise of our founders? Where is the promise of our native land? When is it to be realized? When is it to be realized? If not in the here and the now. It must be realized here and now. It must be realized, that hope, that promise of our founders. It must be realized in the here and the now. So what is the missing ingredient? 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 You said it. Let's all say it. Leadership. What is the missing ingredient? What is the missing ingredient? What is the missing ingredient? The his and the her. High performance, innovation, service, his. High performance, enterprise, respect, her. High performance, enterprise, respect. Hold high the adinkrahini. Hold high the adinkrahini of leadership. Hold high, uphold, revive, revitalize a culture of leadership. Respect and serve. Respect and serve. Thank you. Thank you. Please. Thank you. No.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Let's do it one more time. I believe we were all wide awake. I was looking for more. I didn't want him to finish, and I believe I speak for most of us. Please kindly be seated. Thank you. Thank you so, so much. I won't dilute what he said. I won't begin to do that. What is missing? Leadership. What ought to be done? What should be done? What should we do? I think we will reflect on these. High performance. High performance. There's no substitute for high performance. Enterprise, respect, innovation, his and her. That's what I'm taking away. And I believe you have taken yours as well. As chiefs, as civil society leaders, as politicians, let's go and do our very best for Mother Ghana. Thank you. Thank you so very much. We are live on Joy News, Joy FM, City FM, and I would like at this point to acknowledge our partners who have made this possible. Labadi Beach Hotel, we are very grateful for your support. Special Eyes, Joy News, Asasi Radio, and Unicorn Petroleum. We say thank you. Thank you for your partnership. So this is time for contributions, questions. If you seek clarification on what the guest speaker spoke about, the floor is open. The mics will go around, and so kindly show by hand, and the mic will come to you. And then we will kindly ask Lord Boateng so that we can take. Kindly tell us your name, and then you can ask your question.
Achaba Adesibo. My Lord, great to see you.
Good to see you.
You said, stay up to succeed. Then you asked, what is the missing ingredient? You said leadership. Governance is leadership in thought, action, and practice. Governance is leadership in thought, action, and practice. We are blessed as a country to have had a president whose leadership still resounds in our hearts. That is Sajifo Kwame Nkrumah. I'm glad to be here in this place of academia, and I want to pose a question to all of us. I was in exile for a long time. I came back, and I had one person running to be president, or the running mate of a presidential candidate. And that person had graduated with a first-class degree in political science at Legon. I asked the person, what books of Nkrumah did you read? And he was kind enough to tell me that there was not a single book of Nkrumah that was a recommended text. And that shocked me. Then I started to make some inquiries about the Department of Economics, history, and all that, and it appears the same. So I could not understand why Nkrumah is not studied. But here we have a president who was not only a practitioner, but also a theorist. And he was a leader. And he was also in government. So why are we denying our younger generation the benefit of hindsight, and particularly the scholarship of Osagyefo Kwame Nkrumah? Thank you.
Thank you very much for that question, but also thank you for all you've done to promote African history, Black history, African history, Pan-African history, not just in Ghana, but also and significantly in the United Kingdom. We all owe you a debt of gratitude. I just make two comments. First of all, to commend those who have now established the Kwame Nkrumah Archive. I do think that's a very valuable national resource. I think archives are valuable in the United Kingdom. I chair this Winston Churchill Archive Trust, and I don't think that we always give globally sufficient attention to the importance of maintaining and preserving historic archives and materials. So I hope that will become a center for the study of Pan-Africanism and for Nkrumahism. But I just wanted to say something about this scaling up to succeed, because it seems to me one of the most important qualities of leadership is the capacity to empower others. And I do think that we need to stress the importance as a leader, in wherever we are, in whatever capacity we are called upon to a leadership role, we are strengthened in our leadership and in our impactfulness if we give power to other people, if we recognize people's contribution and empower them to give that contribution. So empowerment is a very, very important quality of leadership. The other important aspect, it seems to me, in terms of scaling up is, we're very good, and there are lots of them, we're very good at creating policies. Well, that's fine. Policies are fine. But if you then don't try and test those policies, if you don't pilot, if having done the pilot, if it fails, well then that's the nature of piloting. All pilots cannot be successful. But where a pilot is successful, then you want to get behind it with investment in order to scale it up. It's not as if we don't know what needs to be done. We know what needs to be done. The question is getting behind it with investment in order to do it. So I put that strong focus on scaling up, empowerment, and actually implementing policy, service delivery. Another question. Sir.
My Lord, at the weekend, especially yesterday, I was watching the football games. My daughter asked me, do you have so many countries in Europe? And I said, yes. So I checked, and we had 44. Something asked me to check again the most developed. And by the Human Performance Index, they said it's Norway. And I looked at the GDP, and I looked at that, and it's Luxembourg. These are small countries. And I asked myself, what do they have that Ghana doesn't have? Luxembourg has about $105,000 as GDP. And you have answered that question. leadership. But do you think we can do it? Or do we have to bring your country back? Or take Norway or Luxembourg to come and do it for us for over 100 years and then go back? Can we do it? Are we capable?
You know, my dear brother. My dear brother, you know, we mustn't beat ourselves up too much. After all, you know, if you want to take the football analogy, where do they go for the best footballers? I'm an Arsenal supporter. Yeah, I know some of you, unfortunately, are not. But the truth of the matter is that there's plenty of talent in Africa, and not just in football. There's plenty of talent in Africa. The challenge for us is to create a space for that talent to grow and to emerge and to realize its potential. The challenge for us is to recognize our responsibility not to collaborate with those who frankly want to keep Africa underdeveloped. Let's be very clear, not everybody in this world wishes Africa well. Some people actually claim they wish Africa well, but actually really they don't, you know. They want us to remain in a recumbent position. They want us to remain on our knees. And one of the things I learned as a boy growing up from the Big Six, one of the things I learned from Kwame Nkrumah is that we have to get off we have to get out of a recumbent position. And we have to stand up. We have to stand up for what is right as well as our rights. We must not sell our heritage for a mess of pottage. And, you know, the answer lies in our own hands. And we have to seize the moment and seize the time. But we must never, ever, ever assume a recumbent position. We mustn't lie down and be walked over. We really mustn't. We've got to get up and assert ourselves. But we have to do that, recognizing, and I go back to it, I make no apology for it. It goes back to the his and her. It is about high performance. It is about innovation. It is about service. It's about high performance. It's about enterprise. It's about respect. It's about empowering ourselves and each other. And when we do that, then we don't have to look to Norway. We don't have to look north, east, or west. We can look at ourselves in the mirror and be proud. That's what we owe the Big Six. That's what we owe our founding mothers and fathers.
Thank you very much, Right Honorable. My name is John Amma, and this is my question. Over the past few years, looking at the COVID-19 pandemic, the Russia and Ukraine war, and recently, the Hamas and Israel war, looking at all these effects taken into consideration, is it still relevant to have a 20 to 30-year strategic development plan? Some school of thoughts are of the view that a shorter or mid-term plan is more ideal because we lose focus and with time, the plan becomes obsolete. Please, what's your take on this? Thank you very much.
Yeah. Well, my take is on that very important question is this. You know, we are where we are. We have the SDGs. 2030 is the objective. I agree with you. The chances of our meeting all those SDGs by 2030 are made that much more challenging by the pandemic, by the Ukraine, by Gaza, and all the events that they represent. But we need to keep our eye on the prize. We need to do the very best that we can in order to achieve as much as we can by 2030. But looking beyond 2030, I personally take the view that we need to look at shorter time spans. But for now, we are where we are. We have the SDGs. We need to redouble our efforts. We need to scale up in order to meet them. That's my take on that.
Thank you. So whenever we stand to talk about leadership, we do mention the name of Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, because indelible print of leadership he left behind. In his government, he faced a lot of setbacks. So my question is, what is the most significant barrier that prevents leaders from delivering on their promises, and how can it be overcome?
Well, you know, in my experience, I've been a lawyer, a politician, a diplomat. In my experience, obstacles to realizing one's objectives come in two forms: internal and external. Internal, it is the human condition. We are frail. We are sinful. We are flawed. That's an internal obstacle to making the best of ourselves. And we need to resist that. And we are not strong enough by ourselves to resist it. We need others. We need our families. We need our partners, our life's partners. Also, we need our God. We really do, you know. That's why I make the comment I make about the Abrahamic tradition. To resist those internal enemies of realizing our potential as leaders, we need to recognize the importance of the spiritual dimension of our lives. But they are also external enemies. They are people and forces in the world who do not wish you to succeed. And the only way, frankly, to deal with them is to stand up to them, not to allow them to succeed in bringing you down. I can tell you, we now know that there were external forces at work in bringing Kwame Nkrumah down. We know that there were internal forces of his own frailty, of our frailty, the frailty of the human condition, and of the frailties of those around him. We know that. But we know also there were external forces. And we have to be alive to that. And that's so in any aspect of leadership. In being alive to that, you know what I've found most useful? I found most useful that passage in Holy Scripture that says that when you are confronted by the other, you must be as cunning as a serpent and as innocent as a dove. As cunning as a serpent and as innocent as a dove.
So good morning to everyone, and good morning to you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Please, my name is Jordan Tetet. I'm a student of University of Professional Studies, Accra. And my statement to you is that from your profound preface, you made mention of effective leadership being the missing piece or the missing recipe. But I believe that in terms of effective leadership, effective followership can never be overemphasized when it comes to effective leadership. So to you, I would like you to contribute or give a few words to all of us as custodians of Ghana upon the things or the attitudes that will execute to represent an effective followership in helping our leaders flourish. Thank you.
You know, the best thing that any one of us can do is to assume responsibility. You know, it's the easiest thing in the world to look to other people to take responsibility for stuff that impacts you. You have to take responsibility yourself. You know, there was a great teacher who lived at the time of our Lord by the name of Hillel. And Hillel used to say this: if I am not for me, who will be for me? If I am not for me, who will be for me? But which is recognizing you have to take responsibility yourself. There's stuff that you have to do. And you can't delegate that responsibility to others who you then follow. You have to take some responsibility for yourself. If I am not for me, who will be for me? But if I am only for me, what am I? If I am only for me, what am I? The importance of interdependence, of recognizing our common and shared humanity. We are fullest in our humanity when we recognize our interdependence. But if I am only for me, who am I? If not now, when? If not now, when? Hillel used to say. The importance of action, of getting on with it. You take responsibility, you recognize your interdependence, and then you yourself act. If not now, when? Not putting it off until everything comes right, or putting it off until the stars say otherwise, or putting it off until, no. If not now, when? You have to act. And then what I would say, if not you, who? If not you, who? So the best thing you can do to support a leader, the best thing you can do to support the leadership, the best thing you can do to develop your own qualities of leadership is to recognize the importance of responsibility, taking responsibility yourself, interdependence, and action. If not you, who? Yes.
Thank you very much, Honorable Lord Boateng, for your comprehensive and enlightening lecture. My name is Jeffrey Osiado, a marketing student of UPSA. And I might say that it was quite an inspiration learning that we both have history with Accra Academy. I'm also a Blood boy, and it was quite amazing seeing you talk to us about this lecture. My question is very simple, and it's very relevant because considering how new technologies and new changes are entering our system, how can leaders balance maintaining the core values and traditions of this country while at the same time adapting to the new changes and innovations that's coming up?
That's a very pertinent question. And it's one that I actually think about quite a bit. Look, you're young, but as for me, I struggle with my smartphone. But I have learned, as I struggle with my smartphone, I don't hesitate to ask my grandchild how to use it. The reality is, I'm afraid, that sometimes us older folk find it hard to surrender power, because knowledge is power. We find it hard to surrender power to younger people and to recognize that if we are to come to grips with what AI, for instance, means to political leadership, then we need to surround ourselves with some younger heads, you know? And we need to be prepared to listen and to learn. And I think we have a bit of a problem in that regard. And it addresses your issue directly. Let me just share this with you. I cannot remember a time when I ever questioned my father in public. I rarely questioned him in private, but I never questioned him in public. And that is our innate deference, is it not, to older people. We tend to defer to older people. Now, of course, if you're older, that's quite an attractive quality because it's nice to have young people defer to you. But it can sometimes be very unhealthy. And I think one of the things we have to do is to be prepared as older people to recognize that there are some areas where we really do have to look to younger people to assume leadership. And AI and understanding AI, we've got to do our best to understand it ourselves, but there's certain things we have to be prepared to do. And one of them is to open up our institutions to the impact of young people. That aspect, that cultural deference, I think sometimes works against us. And I think older and younger alike. Younger people have to be prepared to step up to the plate, to challenge more, and older people have to be prepared to open up and to be more accessible to what young people bring to the table. Because the pace of technological change is such that it really it's impossible for an older generation completely to keep up with it, let alone to drive it and shape it in ways that are constructive. I hope that helps.
Thank you so much for today's lecture. It was very insightful. I'm the person of Melita, and my Lord, please, you addressed something on leadership. You said that leadership was what we needed to make the difference, like in our world. And you noted that one of the ways we build leadership is through our education. Mm-hmm. But currently, we still see that problem of leadership still lingering on. And I would like to know if maybe you'd have any ideas or initiatives we can take, you propose any, that we can take to see this change or to have this leadership quality instilled in us?
Well, my immediate response is that this university is actually tackling this issue. And it needs to be inbuilt into every aspect of what an institute of higher education does. And I think, UPSA is setting a very good example in inaugurating this leadership lecture series, but I suspect and know that you're doing more than that, because you have to embed leadership into each and every course that you do. You know, there has to be a recognition in imparting knowledge, in developing skills that, leadership in application will be part of what you do as you go out into the world. And it has to be something that is embedded into the curriculum. But also, and importantly, I happen to believe that they are agencies for informal education, non-structured education, non-traditional education that are important agencies for leadership. In Ghana, you have what is called the President's Award. Successive presidents of all political parties have had the Head of State's Award. The Head of State's Award is based and part of a family of what we call in the UK the Duke of Edinburgh's Award. So that has a silver, a bronze, a silver, a gold element to it that involves the acquisition of skills, that involves community service, that involves what we call an adventurous journey. It calls upon, it's based on the experience of our own late Duke of Edinburgh, the late Queen's husband, who sought to encourage the development of potential from within a young person. You know, regardless of your academic qualities, you can acquire a skill. You can test that skill. You can engage in community service. You can call and challenge your own resources by an adventurous journey. Do you follow me? And you move from silver, from bronze to silver to gold. And it's a universal standard. At any one time, there are at least 1 million young people in the world doing this particular activity. The current president has been really very, very generous in his support for the award. There are more young people taking the award in Ghana now than at any time in the history of the award. Why is it important? Because it's about recognizing that in a non-academic institutional setting, you can develop your own leadership qualities. So it's about embedding it in the curriculum, yes, but it's also about giving opportunities for non-formal, non-academic self-development, self-education through the Head of State's Award, through scouting, through guiding, through these various other activities that can develop your leadership potential. And the good thing about the award is on your CV, wherever you go in the world, by any employer, you'll be recognized as having developed your own leadership potential, and it will be seen as something that is valuable and important. So the Head of State's Award, the President's Award, bipartisan, non-political, but about self-development, imbuing the qualities of leadership in a whole new generation. Yes. The mic is not working.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, hello. I'm Jude Jekum. My question is that simple. I want to ask, African leaders, especially our politicians, make promises without fulfilling them. I want to know what laws or policies to give out in order to ensure that these promises are delivered.
Look, good try, good try. I told you, I'm not going to comment on either the UK or Ghana or your electoral process, but I will say one thing, and it's this. Every country gets the politicians it deserves. Every country gets the politicians it deserves. You know, politicians, and I'm one of them, we have to be held to account. And we are held to account in an election. You know, Ghana has set a standard in terms of its electoral processes. It doesn't mean that it's perfect. The UK seeks to set a standard in terms of electoral processes. It doesn't mean that it's perfect. But at least in both the UK and in Ghana, there's healthy political debate. There's a contestation of ideas. People have the right to vote and to hold their politicians to account. I'm a great believer in that. You know, I expect to be held to account as a politician. Parliament is there to hold the executive to account. And so my message always, particularly to young people, is I know it's tempting, but don't wash your hands of the political process. Don't say, oh no, it's all too dirty, it's all too corrupt, it's all too this and that. If you believe it is, get in there and clean it up. Clean it up. If you believe it's not engaged with your concerns, get in there and make it engage with your concerns. Do you follow me? You know, there's this maxim, and I believe it to be true. Power concedes nothing without a demand. It never has, and it never will. You know, in the UK, they didn't wake up one morning and say, oh, wouldn't it be nice to have Paul Boateng, Diane Abbott, Bernie Grant, and Keith Vaz as members of Parliament. Do you really believe that that happened in the UK, that suddenly there was a flash of light and a crack of thunder that the Parliament was not representative of the whole community? No, you bet your bottom dollar they didn't. We were elected for the first time in 1987 because a group of people, young and old, black and white, in the towns, in the cities, came together and said, enough is enough. We cannot have an all-white parliament. And it's time that was changed. And we organized. And it was changed. And now in the UK, we take diversity, so far as our political leadership is concerned, for granted. But it didn't just happen. Power concedes nothing without a demand. It never has, and it never will. So my message always to young people is get engaged, get involved. Yeah.
Thank you very much. My name is Daniel with the Communications Department. A year ago, senior citizen Kwame Pianim was here. He belabored extensively on how leadership has not really gone well for the country. Listening to you, you have also belabored the issue about leadership. About a month ago, Sir Sam Jonah, he's here, he also delivered a speech in America, and this is what he said. I am not afraid to say in honor, in candor and humility, that my generation has not been kind to you, the younger generation. We have left for you a world riddled with wars, famine, disease, racial and gender discrimination, and a multitude of problems. Now, anytime we, the young generation, we listen to you, the elderly generation, it appears you seem to be subtly admitting that you have not been kind to us.
No.
What?
No way. I'm not going to admit that. You got the wrong one here, brother.